It was a bright, early morning in Barcelona. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a soft orange glow over the city, its rays spilling across the famous Camp Nou stadium. Inside the city's heart, a young man sat in his small apartment, the quiet hum of the city outside the window and the gentle click of his laptop keys filling the silence. Lamin Yamal, barely out of his teenage years, was looking at property listings on the screen in front of him. Despite being the lowest-paid football player at one of the most iconic football clubs in the world, FC Barcelona, he had big plans, and they didn't involve just the pitch. Lamin's journey to Barcelona had been nothing short of miraculous. At just 16 years old, he had made his first team debut for one of the biggest football clubs in history. The world had been watching, and scouts from all over Europe had already seen the raw talent he possessed. His feet danced with the ball in ways that seemed to defy physics, and his vision on the field was that of a seasoned player far beyond his years. Barcelona, ever known for nurturing young talents, had immediately signed him to the club's La Masia academy before pushing him into the senior squad. But despite all this, Lamin was not the highest-paid player on the team. In fact, when it came to wages, he was far from it. The reason for this was simple: Lamin Yamal had only just started. The club, ever careful with its financial investments, had structured his contract in such a way that he would earn a modest salary, given his age and relatively brief career. His contract, signed when he was barely a teenager, reflected the hope that he would rise, and as he did, his wages would increase exponentially. For now, though, Lamin earned less than many of his teammates, and far less than the stars of the team. But there was more to Lamin than his salary. Beneath the surface, Lamin had a vision that few knew about. It wasn't just about playing football, winning trophies, or enjoying the glamour that came with being a professional footballer. His mind was always working, always strategizing. He had grown up in a humble household with his family in Spain. His parents had sacrificed a lot for his success, moving from their homeland in the hopes of creating a better future for him. His mother had worked multiple jobs, while his father had made sure Lamin stayed grounded, away from the distractions of fame that often consumed young athletes. Despite his modest beginnings, Lamin had one thing in abundance: ambition. And it was this ambition that led him to consider an investment most young footballers wouldn't even dream of: real estate. Lamin's love for football was undeniable, but his curiosity about the world outside the sport was just as strong. He had been reading books and articles about finance, business, and entrepreneurship since his early teens. Real estate, in particular, caught his eye. He'd heard stories about athletes who had made their fortunes off the pitch by investing in property, and he wanted to do the same. Despite being the lowest-paid player on the team, Lamin had learned early on that there was more to life than just a paycheck. And while his salary might not have been the highest, he knew how to save and budget. The idea first came to him after seeing the success of other athletes who had diversified their investments. Some bought luxurious cars, others had extravagant clothing collections, but the ones who fascinated Lamin the most were those who bought real estate. It was the stability, the long-term financial security, and the ability to build something that could outlast their careers that appealed to him. But there was a challenge. How could someone with such a modest salary, especially in a city as expensive as Barcelona, ever hope to afford property? Even a small apartment in a decent neighborhood would be beyond his reach. Yet, Lamin wasn't deterred. He had always been good at finding solutions. His agent, a seasoned professional who had been with him since his youth days, often told him that money wasn't the issue, it was how you used it. Lamin understood that. While the senior players in Barcelona were splashing out on million-euro homes, cars, and jewelry, he had been living in a modest apartment in the city. His living situation was comfortable enough, but it was small, and he could feel the weight of wanting more, not for himself, but for his family. His parents had always supported him, and as much as he loved them, he wanted to provide for them in ways they couldn't have imagined when they first moved to Spain. One day, Lamin was talking to one of his older teammates, an experienced player who had been in the game for over a decade. The man had made a significant fortune off his investments and had a keen eye for real estate. "You don't have to wait until you're a superstar to start building your future, Lamin," the player said. "If you're smart with your money, you can make a move now. It's all about knowing the market, finding opportunities, and being patient." Lamin took those words to heart. It was then that he made his first big decision. He would buy a property. Not for himself, but for his family. He had been watching the real estate market in Barcelona, studying it closely. He knew that certain areas were becoming more desirable, and while the city was known for its expensive properties, there were still pockets where one could make an investment. It wasn't going to be a lavish mansion in the center of the city, but it would be something stable, something that could provide his family with financial security. With the help of his agent, Lamin started looking at properties that were slightly off the beaten path, places that might not have been on the radar of the big investors but had potential for growth. The goal wasn't to buy something flashy but to make a smart move. He found a small, two-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood that was undergoing gentrification. The price was reasonable, and while the area wasn't the most luxurious in Barcelona, it had promise. Lamin didn't mind the idea of investing in a neighborhood that was still in the process of being developed. It was a long-term play. He saved up for months, carefully budgeting his income, cutting down on unnecessary expenses. Every paycheck was a step closer to his goal. He was also getting tips from his older teammate, who explained the importance of understanding the market dynamics and the potential for growth in less developed areas. Finally, after nearly a year of planning, Lamin was ready. He had enough saved up for a down payment, and with the assistance of his agent, he managed to secure a loan for the remainder of the property's cost. It wasn't the most expensive property in Barcelona, but to Lamin, it was the beginning of something far greater. The day he closed the deal, Lamin couldn't help but smile. He had done it. Against all odds, he had made his first real estate purchase. It wasn't just a win for him, it was a win for his family. His mother had always wanted a place to call their own, something stable where they wouldn't have to worry about rent increases or moving every few years. Now, Lamin had given them that security. But this was just the beginning. Lamin knew that buying one apartment wasn't going to change everything overnight. He would need to continue working hard on the pitch, continue improving, and continue learning about the business side of things. There was much more to come. As he sat in his small apartment that evening, thinking about the future, Lamin knew that his story was far from over. He wasn't just the young, lowest-paid footballer at Barcelona anymore. He was a player with a plan, a vision for the future. And with that vision, anything seemed possible. The sound of football boots tapping against the Camp Nou turf was almost hypnotic. Lamin Yamal had grown accustomed to the rhythm, the crowd's roar in the background, and the intensity of training that accompanied playing for FC Barcelona. Yet, as he stood on the pitch during yet another morning session, his mind was elsewhere. The deal was done. His first real estate investment was in the bag, but now he had to navigate the next part of his journey, a journey that was much more than just football. Over the following months, Lamin's life became a delicate balancing act between his football career and his budding real estate venture. While his teammates were living the high life, spending their paychecks on lavish vacations and expensive gadgets, Lamin was putting his earnings towards something far more meaningful. The small apartment he had purchased for his family was now fully renovated. He had even arranged for a property management company to look after it. His parents were overjoyed, but they knew nothing of the behind-the-scenes struggles. Lamin didn't want them to worry. He wanted them to enjoy the benefits of the stable, modest home he had provided for them, without knowing just how hard he had worked to make it happen. Even though the first property had been a relatively small step, Lamin's ambitions were much grander. He had already begun scouting additional properties, studying the market with the same dedication he applied to his football training. He kept an eye on new developments around Barcelona, focusing on areas that were still affordable but had the potential for significant appreciation. But there was one key thing that made this real estate venture different from his career as a footballer: timing. The market was always shifting, and unlike football, where talent and performance would dictate his future, real estate required a different skill set: patience, foresight, and the ability to recognize the right moment to act. Lamin's agent, who had become a trusted advisor in more ways than one, continued to guide him through the process. "You've made a solid start, Lamin," his agent would tell him, "but now, we need to think bigger. The key to growing your wealth isn't just buying one property. It's about building a portfolio. Building a portfolio." That phrase became Lamin's mantra. He knew it wouldn't happen overnight, and it would take even more sacrifice. There was a level of discipline required that he hadn't anticipated. Most players his age were spending their spare time enjoying the luxuries of their newfound fame, taking trips, buying designer clothes, or hanging out with friends at fancy restaurants. Lamin, on the other hand, spent most of his free time studying real estate trends, attending seminars, and talking to experts. He wanted to make every decision count. He was no longer just a young footballer with a dream, he was an investor, learning how to turn his earnings into something that could stand the test of time. As Barcelona's lowest-paid player, Lamin knew that he couldn't afford to squander the little money he had. His teammates earned millions per year, with some of them flaunting their wealth in public, but Lamin was taking a different route. He was learning the art of living beneath his means, of being strategic about where and how he spent his money. His real estate journey was also teaching him valuable lessons in personal finance. Unlike football, where the rewards came from talent and hard work on the field, in real estate, the rewards came from managing cash flow, leveraging opportunities, and being able to foresee potential down the road. Lamin had started small, but now, his confidence was growing. He was learning how to handle multiple properties, how to deal with tenants, and how to maximize his return on investment. One particular project, however, posed a major challenge. Lamin had found a multi-unit building on the outskirts of Barcelona. The area had started to attract young professionals due to its proximity to transport links and affordable living, but it was still relatively underdeveloped. It wasn't the kind of property his fellow footballers would typically consider investing in, too risky, they would say, but Lamin saw potential. He also knew that it would take more capital than the first property he had purchased. To make this work, he would need to take a bigger risk. He took a deep breath and made the decision. With the help of his agent and a trusted financial advisor, Lamin secured a larger loan to fund the purchase. He was nervous, unsure if he was making the right call. His income from football was still modest compared to some of his teammates, and the added responsibility of owning multiple properties was not something he had anticipated when he first set foot in Barcelona. But as the renovation work began on the building, Lamin felt a sense of satisfaction. He could see it coming together, the vision he had in his head was slowly becoming a reality. The building would not only become a source of income but also a lasting legacy. When the project was completed, Lamin would have multiple rental units, each providing a steady cash flow. This, he knew, would give his family the security they had always dreamed of and help him build a financial foundation for his future that was separate from football. In the meantime, his football career was steadily progressing. Lamin's performances on the pitch had improved, and while he remained one of the lowest-paid players, his potential was undeniable. The coaches at Barcelona were beginning to take notice of his growth, not only as a player but as a professional. They saw the discipline he applied both on and off the field. He wasn't just showing up for training, he was putting in the extra hours, studying the game, and working on his fitness. His talent was being matched by his work ethic. And though his salary was far from the highest in the team, his value was rising. It didn't take long for the Barcelona hierarchy to start considering him for more significant roles in the team. Soon, he found himself starting more games, making crucial plays, and contributing to the team's success. His real estate ventures, while still demanding attention, were taking a backseat to his growing football career, but Lamin never lost sight of his ultimate goal. Football, he knew, would not last forever. Real estate, on the other hand, offered him the kind of long-term stability that the unpredictable nature of football could not. One day, as Lamin sat down with his financial advisor to review the progress on his portfolio, he took a moment to reflect on how far he had come. From being a teenager with dreams of playing for Barcelona to now owning several properties, he had achieved things that many of his peers would never even think about. "I can't believe this all started with one small apartment," Lamin said, a smile creeping onto his face. His financial advisor laughed. "You've come a long way, Lamin. But remember, this is just the beginning. Keep building, keep learning. Football might be your passion, but real estate could be your legacy." And Lamin believed that. He was no longer the lowest-paid player on the team, nor was he just a talented footballer. He was now a young investor with a growing portfolio, balancing the demands of his career with his ambition to create lasting financial stability for his family. The real estate world, once foreign to him, was now an integral part of his future. As Lamin Yamal walked out of his office that afternoon, his mind was already racing with new ideas. His journey had only just begun, and he was ready for whatever came next, both on and off the field. Thank you very much, see you in the next video.